Part 2. A few days after the interaction in the garden, a right miracle happened. I was left in the house on my own, though perhaps not entirely alone, as the cook, who stayed down in the kitchen most of the time, was in the house should I require assistance in some unlikely emergency. Nevertheless, with this singular exception, I was left properly to my own devices. Jonathan had a pregnant patient who needed tending to, and Mary had gone with him. A baby was to be born, and she wanted to help. Mycroft Holmes was rarely in to begin with. Therefore, I was left with this wonderful treat of freedom. After a few hours in my room with the books Mary had lent me, I decided to hobble about the house. I had previously made up my mind that I would become fully mobile as swiftly as I possibly could, in order to make better use of my skills. The last batch of copies had already been delivered to the Red Cross office, so this was the best I could do at the moment. As I made my way about the halls and rooms of the grand old house, I heard some faint, unexpected noise, and paused. Hearing nothing more, I continued down the hall towards my host's study when I heard it again, a distinct shuffling of papers. From where I stood, I could see nothing of the interior, though the door was half open. I froze and thought for a moment. The cook never entered the study. It was possible Mr. Holmes had returned, though unlikely, and Mary would have come to find me directly. I knew that the doors were all kept locked with the exception of the kitchen, and I had already gone by to see the cook, who would have mentioned it if someone had come in. So either someone had, unbelievably, broken into the second floor without making any noise, or, more likely, it was a compatriot of my host in possession of a key. Content with this explanation, I decided to investigate. I was thoroughly bored and thought this person might be interesting, so I pushed open the door with an "Excuse me." Stepping into the room, I saw a man leaning his thighs against Mycroft's desk while holding a thick book in his hands. I make note of this because Mycroft Holmes' desk was one of those grand, tall, oaken ones which comes to the true waist of anyone of average height, including himself. This man, I imagined, could sit on it quite comfortably should he so choose. He was well dressed, with dark hair and gray eyes that gazed out at me over a Roman nose. "Ah, you must be a friend of Mr. Holmes. Forgive my interruption. The door was open, and I thought he may have returned." I gave the man my meekest smile. After all, well, he must know Mr. Holmes to be so brazen in his office. He was still a stranger to me, and I was not about to risk his anger. His eyes glanced me over, then slipped back down to his book. "There is no need to lie, Dr. Watson." Taken aback, I blinked. "Pardon?" He put his book down and crossed his arms. "I heard you walking down the hall. You stopped twice, once right outside the door. You heard me and stopped to decide the likelihood of my being an intruder, no?" Dumbfounded, I let out a breath. Well, no need to lie indeed. No one had ever seen through my lies before, or, at least if they did, they usually pretended in the same manner as Mycroft Holmes. "Seeing as you know my name already, may I know yours?" He gave a smirk and rolled his shoulders. "Sherlock. Sherlock Augustus Felix Holmes." I squinted. "That's an interesting combination." He gave a little gesture with his hand. "Father was a bit eccentric. Now, Dr. Watson, what are you doing out of bed?" I sighed inwardly. Clearly Mary had informed him regarding the health of her patient. "I'm allowed to roam about the house as long as I'm not excessive about it." He tilted his head and raised a brow, a gesture which I would grow unfortunately familiar with. "The adrenaline that must have run through you while thinking I may be an intruder must have left you quite unsteady." I was uncertain what to make of this man. He had confidence like his elder brother, but managed to come off quite smarmy. The Holmes with whom I was acquainted knew he was smarter than you, but was at least polite enough to pretend that he wasn't. This one seemed to exude smugness that just made you want to slap him. Taking this in, I realized I had dealt with his type before. It was better not to challenge them outright, especially when they haven't technically done anything yet, so I inhaled slowly. "I do believe you are right, Mr. Holmes. I'll leave you to wait for my host, since I should be resting." Rather than await his response, I turned to leave, but a hand on my shoulder prevented me. Do be more fun, Doctor. I simply expected you to be flighty, like most women. I apologize for trying to work you up. His hand was gone as soon as I turned, which relieved me. He at least wasn't going to physically restrain me like some might have. I forced a smile. There is nothing to forgive, Mr. Holmes. You have been a perfect gentleman. I was going to attempt to excuse myself once more, but he snorted a laugh which caught me off guard. Of course, but may I ask, Doctor, why you don't seem shaken? I raised a brow. You were frightened enough to freeze in the hallway, yet you show no signs of it except for caution in greeting me. Why? Your stance is as firm as can be expected. If, Mr. Holmes, you are anything like your brother, you should already know the answer to that question. Annoyance flashed over his face. Yes, I'm certain the months you've spent at Ypres have certainly helped to desensitize you. However, most who return from war are easier to frighten, not less. I rolled my eyes. If you must have the truth, Mr. Holmes, I was frightened. I'm a small, weak woman who would be easy to harm or take advantage of, the more so for someone stealthy and strong enough to break into a house such as this. Yet that is exactly why I can't show fear. The moment you let fear take over, you lose. I stared into those gray eyes, knowing he had succeeded in riling me up. He smiled. Yes, I suppose that is true. May I escort you back to your room? I shook my head. I'm quite capable of returning there myself. Thank you. He nodded and returned to his book as I once more turned to leave. One more thing, good doctor. I turned, half expecting some sass-filled remark. That ribbon quite suits you. The return of my host did little to settle me that evening. The encounter with this unfamiliar member of the Holmes household had left me with questions, and I wished to have them answered. To this end, for the first time since arriving in London, I had my final meal of the day with the family. Mary was so excited I nearly changed my mind after telling her, thinking she might be too exhausting to deal with. Even so, curiosity is a stubborn thing, and I pushed on. She wanted to dress me like a doll, but I reminded her that I was still incapable of wearing skirts, so she settled for a blouse and sweater from her own wardrobe. It was less than becoming. The lady's sweater looked thoroughly strange when paired with the men's trousers, and the soft pink color did my complexion no favors. Still, she pressed on and tied a matching ribbon around my head before allowing me to go down. Mary stepped back. There, at least you look like a presentable invalid. I followed her to the dining room and saw both Holmes brothers, their brother-in-law, and a woman whom I did not recognize. Wells helped Mary and I to our seats before taking his own. Mycroft began speaking first. There was no real need for formality here tonight. He then sat slowly into his chair, his eyes swollen from lack of sleep. He was clearly tired, and I wasn't surprised in the slightest. While I didn't know exactly what he did in the government, I knew it was rather confidential, which translated from governmental speak means stressful. Sherlock, this is Dr. Watson, who will be staying here until her uncle is certain of his safe passage home. Dr. Watson, the woman across from you is Mrs. Hudson. She is a long-time friend of ours and will be staying here until her house can be repaired. Concern must have flashed over my features as I answered. A pleasure to meet you both. The woman in question gave me a smile. Don't worry, dear. No one was hurt, and I had the place insured to the gills. I laughed. Well, that's a relief to hear. Despite her circumstances, she came off quite jovial, and I was content to accept that fact. Mary then chimed in with an excited tone. Sherlock, did you resolve your case? Were there any vampires? Her brother gave her a bored look. Yes, I took care of it, and no, there were no vampires, Mary. The child had been poisoned, and the mother was attempting to suck it out before the pitied thing fell ill. It is sad what a jealous child is willing to do to their own sibling, only because they do not like their stepmother. Fortunately for the child, it was only a pinprick from the poisoned dart. I was rather bewildered, but focused on my supper instead of asking questions. If what I knew from my experience rang true, I would get enough information to answer them without saying a single word. Mary's face fell. Oh, how disappointing! This took me aback. You would rather there were vampires? I don't exactly know the whole story, but if a child were bitten, it would not take much to drain the blood from it. The entire table looked at me in a mix of surprise and approval at my exclamation, and I wished I had stayed in my room after all. Mary frowned and shook her head. No, she proceeded slowly. "I don't suppose I wished for vampires exactly, but I do wish it were a bit more exciting than a jealous sibling." Mrs. Hudson huffed. "I think a jealous child is more than exciting enough. He tried to kill his brother. Let me tell you, if I were that child's mother, I never would have set him up to hate my successor so. After all, a man needs a woman to run the house. Who knows how much torment that poor woman went through at his hands?" The younger Holmes brother shook his head. "Mrs. Hudson, you know all too well that I don't appreciate unfounded speculation. Dr. Watson's comment was the only factual one. But, Doctor," his eyes settled on me, a stern look gradually fading from his face, "did my sister ever explain to you what it is that I do?" I mentally cursed. I had not wanted the attention on me, but I had thoroughly miscalculated. My presence at dinner was a novelty, so of course the attention would fall upon me at some point. I gave my best smile. Not exactly, Mr. Holmes. She mentioned that you take on cases for Mycroft, and have been handling family affairs as well as your own. Naturally, I assumed you to be a detective for Scotland Yard." I pulled the comment about the yard out of thin air, having heard Mycroft Holmes call them fumblingly inept. I hoped that he would share his brother's distaste for the officers, and I would be able to divert his attention. It worked, in a way. He frowned. "I would never work for the Yard. They are slow and far too ready to accept the simplest conclusion. I am a consulting detective. Your attentiveness is impressive, Doctor, if similar to those you thought I worked with." The backhanded compliment did little to bother me, since I just wanted the attention of the table off me. If he thought me prone to erroneous conclusions, that would be acceptable, considering I knew his conclusion was not untrue. Jonathan glanced at me in surprise. "Was that a compliment from Sherlock Holmes? Well, well, Watson, you are special." I wanted desperately to slap him and began to rage internally. "Really? Is Jonathan so socially inept he couldn't comprehend the second part of that compliment?" My right hand clenched, but I continued my smile, mentally talking myself down. "Play dumb, Johanna. That will get you out of this. Oh, why did I decide to join this dinner again? Yes, curiosity. I always knew it would be the death of me." Sherlock Holmes, the consulting detective, glanced to Jonathan, then caught my gaze. He glanced down in the direction of my hidden fist, then raised a brow. I forcibly relaxed my hand and put on an innocent face. "I suppose you're right, Jonathan. She must be." Sherlock Holmes' eyes remained on mine, his smile indicating he knew exactly what I was feeling. I hadn't lost control of a situation like that since childhood, and began justifying to myself. "Surely I'm just out of practice after being on the battlefield. That's all. Surely." Mycroft Holmes then came to my rescue, bringing up something of importance which I failed to catch, flustered as I was. She said she wanted to inquire into the affair, but was uncertain if anyone could be spared. Dr. Wells brought me back into the moment with the well-placed pinch. I gave him an incredulous look, and he returned it with a half-hearted smile. I suddenly understood. I, too, had handled soldiers who returned shocked by their experiences. It seemed he assumed me to share the affliction given my circumstances. Apparently, the mother has insisted upon it. The brute's behavior was supposedly awful, and she wants him out of the country as soon as possible. She seems to believe that an American agency signing off on it will speed up the process. Since the Yard is likely to blame her son, it's important that the matter is settled quickly, and that's where you come in, Dr. Watson. Both Holmes brothers turned to look at me, and I was all the more grateful that Jonathan snapped me too. I'd be happy to do whatever lies within my capabilities to help. I decided upon the generic reply, partly to keep Mary appeased, as I knew she would not want me straining myself. I had already concluded she would likely have attempted to swaddle me had I been any less reluctant. Additionally, I really hadn't the slightest clue what they were talking about. Mycroft nodded. He was accustomed to my uncle and likely believed me to be as sharp-witted. Good, it will look better for all parties if an American is involved. She said if you were up to it, she would let you represent the cross officially. Between you and Sherlock, I'm certain you will be able to get it sorted. Still bewildered, I nodded. I'll do my best. The younger Holmes was smirking at me, and I was about to address him when Mary spoke. "Oh, Mrs. Hudson, do say something. They're going to kill her with overwork. It's bad enough that she writes when she should be in bed." At that, I was determined. Anything would be better than Mary's constant coddling. The girl was lovely, but if I didn't get away from her, I was going to lose my mind and murder someone myself. Probably Jonathan, for his insistence upon making her my nurse. Mrs. Hudson nodded. I agree with Mary. If she helps, Sherlock will have to drag her around London, and that would be terrible for her health. Not certain how to combat this interjection, I looked to the man in question. He raised a brow at me and gave that same smirking smile, and I suddenly remembered that I would have to work with him. His behavior felt strange and confused me. He was clearly much like his brother, but there was something different, something which reminded me of an old friend of my uncle. It was not the time for unfounded comparisons, however. I could handle slight discomfort from a man whose position kept him from harming me. I looked at Mary, who, with her slightly showing stomach, looked quite comical as she pouted. I would not continue to be her doll any longer. I'm certain your brother will ensure that I don't overtax myself, Mary. Besides, you heard Mr. Holmes. I was specially requested. I can't stay in bed forever. If I don't get out and get more exercise, my muscles will atrophy terribly. Isn't that right, Wells? Jonathan, who had returned his focus to his dinner, gave me an annoyed look and sighed. Dr. Watson is correct, my dear. You shouldn't coddle her too much, or her health will deteriorate further. Mary pouted and sighed. Fine, but Sherlock, you take good care of her. If her health declines, I'm blaming you both. The two elder Holmes shared a chuckle. It seemed littlest sisters are the same throughout the world. At that moment, one of the servants came in and presented a small card on a platter to the younger Holmes, who glanced at it and immediately stood. Dr. Watson, if you will get your coat and accompany me. It seems our man was found dead.